Hey, what's up? I'm Guy.
I'm John.
It's our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. Give this video a like.
Check out the podcast below in the description as well.
Now, we've been all in on football for football season, obviously. I got to tell you, Monday night, Twitter started to heat up on the NBA. Woj says Harden turns down the chance to be the first $50 million player a year in the NBA and is focused on a trade to the Nets. And I went, whoa, here we go. All of a sudden, my basketball thing flipped in my head. We've seen some crazy ones. I'll never forget where I was when LeBron announced that he was taking his talents to South Beach. I was in your apartment in Philadelphia when the Warriors got KD. Never forget that one, right? That was a 4th of July morning at 7:50.
Build up for both those two, right? Everyone knew Kevin Durant was going to be a free agent. LeBron was crazy for a year. This one a little out of left field.
But I think just as crazy for different reasons, but it is tier 1 insane. You agree?
You and I went to a lot of Warriors games before Kevin Durant showed up. I thoroughly enjoyed Oklahoma City as their own independent entity. In a weird way, I love the Warriors. I didn't need Kevin Durant to come to the Warriors. Now, once he was here, it was a relatively enjoyable experience for me. But at the same time, it did hurt basketball. I think even players have been open about it. All the old guys the new age guys, they're just haters. No, they just all played each other, and it was a huge point of pride to try to beat each other. Now, it's different with, leaving as a free agent. I never held it against Kevin for leaving. I have a much bigger issue with guys forcing, even LeBron. He's left as a free agent now multiple times. I was disgusted by Anthony Davis. It's like, bro, they gave you $180 million and you force your way out. James, they have built this whole fucking operation around you. They have paid you an accumulated amount. He's on a $250 million contract right now. Maybe it's $233 or something. They had paid him, remember, when they had originally traded for him, they gave him a huge contract. They've paid him a ton of money. They've given you absolutely everything. And they literally let him dribble and shoot every play. They couldn't have done any more. And I saw someone say, it's like, I love it when guys go, I need a place that I can thrive in. I just don't think this is a winning environment, or I just don't think we can get it done here anymore. That's an indictment on you. It's
when the
you,
whole thing's built
James.
around you, it is, yeah.
At least if I wanted to defend Anthony Davis, the Pelicans were a joke. This team has been one of the better teams in the league since James Harden has been there. They've been to multiple conference finals. They have been right on the cusp. He has consistently let down. Now you could push back and go, well, John, maybe he's just acknowledging he can't be the alpha, so he needs to go be a beta with Kyrie to Kevin's alpha. Maybe that's the case. But I'm exhausted with the NBA, man. I really am. And even before James Harden happened, the trade for Drew Holiday, which they basically gave a similar package that the Lakers gave to the Pelicans for Anthony Davis, all these unprotected firsts and all these pick swaps, when they don't even, the reason they did it is to keep Giannis, who refuses to sign long-term, and then Drew Holiday is also an unrestricted free agent in a year. Both these guys can leave, and it's like the GM will get crushed if they all leave. These guys are just helpless. I mean, these players, it went from players need some empowerment to now I think we've jumped the shark. Have we not? I mean, we did a couple years ago. But
yeah, I
this
thought
is getting outrageous.
I do trace it back to the Kevin decision. Not like you said, it's different. Kevin was all in Oklahoma City when he was there, right? I know there's all these always all these backstories about, was he 1 foot out? What? All I know is I watched him when he was in Oklahoma City.
We went to the OKC Golden State the conference finals games. He was awesome.
He was fantastic, right? If it wasn't for one of my favorite games of all time, Klay Thompson in OKC,
yeah,
it could have been a different story. But I don't think it's good for the NBA to have their best players on different teams all the time. That is my take, period. It's not good for the sport for all your best players to constantly be changing teams, because the best thing you can do in any sport is build up easy to identify sides. This team versus this team. This guy versus this guy. That's the best storylines you can build. Not people, and I'm going to use I'm using movie or WWE terminology here, double crossing each other and constantly changing. I think one phrase that's lost its meaning because it's been used so much is soap opera. It's such a soap opera. But if you really just sit back and think about, if you maybe there are people too young that haven't watched a soap opera. Watch 5 minutes of a soap opera. It's so dramatic. The same characters are always there. There's always someone's about to die or someone's about to get a divorce or someone's about to whatever. I haven't watched one in years. But in the end, it's just musical chairs. Like nothing ever actually happens. It's just musical chairs. None of it really means anything. And in the NBA, it's just this level of musical chairs. Free agency can be really good for just entertainment, right? Trade deadlines and free agency are phenomenal. We see it in the NFL.
But it always has in the three major sports, right?
Oh, absolutely. But there is such a thing as too much of it. Yeah. Like at the end of the day, the free agency, you need Reggie. To me, it's all about, and this is where I think the NFL thrives, is the storylines in the NFL are so easy to consume. It's like, it's Brady and the Patriots and Bill against Peyton and the Colts. That's it. Well, that's it. That's every year, over and over and over again. That's all it is.
If the NFL was the NBA, do you know a talking point that would be inevitable? Do Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert force their way out in the next couple of years? Are they going to be unhappy?
How do the Chargers How do the Ravens make Lamar Jackson happy?
These conversations are a huge reason. Listen, there are a myriad of factors.
The Chiefs. Why the NBA, we think Pat Mahomes on the team for 10 years. Not if he was an NBA player, he wouldn't be.
No, well, we know he's on the team for 10 years. He just signed his quote-unquote supermax.
Got to keep him happy.
They're not even halfway through their rookie careers. I think Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, if they stay healthy, are on their team for a decade. Right? I would be very, very confident. They're not going.
Any rookie quarterback who, if they turn out to be a franchise quarterback, a decade plus. I mean, into their.
Now, in fairness to James, he has been on the Houston Rockets now for a while. I think he played 7 years there. But it's like, James, you were the guy always like, this guy's good. We get Dwight Howard. He's not good enough. Go get me Chris Paul. Oh, he's not good enough. Go get me Russell Westbrook. He couldn't have had any more power, guy. You could argue in the history of the league, even LeBron James, when you factor in what they allowed him to do with the offense and how they allowed him to handpick his sidekick, I don't know if an NBA player has ever had more power. And it also shows you, I say this all the time, the top like 20 guys in the NBA. And this is always when it gets political. It's like, these guys are so much wealthier than the other two sports athletes. Like their wealth is, they live next to Mark Zuckerberg. They live next to the guy that runs Sony Productions and their wealth is stupid wealth because their NBA contracts, which are now $30-40 million, all guaranteed, is not their biggest resource anymore. The shoe contracts are paying them an astronomical amount of money. James Harden, without hesitation, and this is a powerful thing to do when anyone that's ever said no to any amount of money, but when you can with a straight face, when they go, hey, you're already on a $240 million contract. We're going to add $100 million just for the 2 years. So it's going to average out at like $51 million a year. He can say without hesitation, no, I'm good. I don't want it. And that clearly signals like you got to get rid of me. But that's not a good thing. Like I think the money now is so out of whack. Like it all leads back to the interest in the league has diminished.
I disagree a little bit. To me, I'm not saying it's not connected, but I don't care about like some of these other things that have become I do care. I just think this individually can be its own thing. And I think James Harden making $500 million on the Rockets for his whole career is fine. Like,
I'm not saying he's making too much money. My point is the problem, and this is why the players are going to have more and more juice. Money means nothing to them.
Yeah,
now.
The team's only leverage is the money.
Is to pay you money. And that's the one thing that baseball and football still really have when I offer you these huge contracts. Mike Trout plays.
And the reason it's valuable, sorry, John, the reason that matters, right, is that you can't, if people are willing to take less money, now you can, it creates an imbalance, whereas in baseball for so long it was the teams that had all the money could crush the teams that had none of the money. Now if the money doesn't mean anything to the players, you can't limit how many, you can't keep a team from monopolizing, right, because the players will prioritize just, I want to play with, which in theory is what you want. Like you want players who want to be in the perfect situation, not necessarily. It's what we've always been asking. Like, don't go to the most money, right? But this is not exactly, I think, what people had in mind when they said that.
I think when the Angels offered Mike Trout or just paid him like $400 million, his team stinks. If anything, he would have been smart to let it play out. If he was an NBA player, he 100% would have let it play out. Hell, he might have forced his way out. But he took the money. In football, it clearly guys immediately take the money. In basketball now, This guy just doesn't want to be there. The money, he has hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank. It does not matter to him. And like you said, I saw some people on Twitter like, just to have 7 teams, L.A., New York, Miami, Boston, and just have them all get together. Well, why are we even faking it? Especially if in 2 years Giannis leaves and Drew Holiday walks after they did this. Like, the whole thing is just, we all agree it's kind of a joke now. And again, the health of the sport, which 20 years ago, I don't know if it was big as it was way bigger than it is now. And I think it's been proven that out. I still love it. I know you do too, but it's getting, I don't love this stuff. Like, I like this rivalry that happened with the Warriors and James Harden and the Rockets. Like, that's when I grew up, the NBA was a big deal because teams hated each other. Who gives a shit? He goes to the Nets. There's no rivalry with anything. It's like,
well, we're
Nets.
talking.
It's like a renegade squad.
This is like
mercenaries.
This is like a 2-parter, right? One part of it is, part of this conversation is putting all the good teams, all the good players on just a few teams, and the other part of it is like the player movement thing, right? So it's 2 different things. I think both of them are significant. I think both of them are the biggest reasons why the NBA has the problems that it has. Like, I would have 100% signed Kevin Durant if I was the Warriors. If I'm a Warriors fan, I loved it. But when it happened and you and I were benefiting from it because we're doing radio, it was clear this is not what's good for the big picture. You need as many teams. The NFL benefits because, well, from a lot of things, but one of the things is there are a lot of teams that you think in a given year can win a championship. And so it's the constant player movement, and B, it is the saturation of talent. And it's better for Kevin Durant to play against Steph Curry than for Kevin Durant and Steph Curry. It's better for Kevin to play against Kyrie and against Harden because you're just multiplying the number of games that are interesting. You've got all these games. You are multiplying the number of games that are interesting when you have good players on multiple teams.
Well, here's the thing. Houston is one of the biggest markets in America. I would imagine they have been, we're in our mid-30s, have been good the majority of our life, right? When we were growing up, they had Akeem, and then into the late 90s, early 2000s, they pivoted pretty fast once they got Tracy McGrady, Yao Ming, and then to James. Like, they have been consistently competitive. So I would say Houston in that area, probably basketball's not number one, but they just have a lot of casual fans. They have a lot of people that are in the general market. When a guy like this is going to force his way out, and that seems like inevitable as we're recording this, it's one thing when a guy leaves, and Oklahoma City knew it was a possibility. There's nothing you can do. When a guy forces his way out, you essentially, James Harden, he's not my type player, but no one, and I mean no one, doesn't acknowledge he's an elite player, a top 4 or 5 player in the league, especially when you factor in the regular season. He's like a baseball player like that, right? His value for the regular season is so valuable. Might let you down in the playoffs, but if his teammate's Kevin Durant, you're actually going to be in pretty good shape. You're not going to
I've watched so many playoff series with him that are, even if he loses, they are fantastic, right?
Well, remember, we went to a game when he was young against Dwight Howard, or when Dwight Howard was on the team when they were playing the Warriors in the Western Conference Finals, and it was just like he was just banging Jays.
Terrifying.
I think maybe the Warriors ended up winning, but he was incredible. And that was before
they ended up trapping him. Remember, they turned Steph and Clay trapped him at that.
Wouldn't you say that was a little before he became this James Harden?
But I just remember you and I sitting there being terrified every time he touched the ball, and that's the best.
He was transitioning it into a superstar right then.
Yeah, and that was such a great experience.
But the Rockets will have to take back, if James Harden's $1, probably take back like 65 cents.
What's the other problem is NBA draft picks.
Then I lose the best player in my franchise since Hakeem, and I get nothing really back for it. And then I don't have that much to show for him because I've gotten rid of all these picks. Why? Because we've gone all in the last half decade for him. He kind of fucks me if I'm a Rocket fan. Like, my team moving forward.
Yeah, there's a reason.
It's like we've done everything possible to – James, we've literally handed you the franchise. The Houston Rockets – I would say the Houston Rockets have handed him the keys to the franchise more than even like the Warriors to Steph. I mean, they couldn't have done anything more. They literally built the entire franchise around one human. Unlike, I think, anything we've ever seen. It was, as a basketball fan, it's hard to watch.
It was kind of at a high level. It doesn't really happen in football in this way, right? But it's kind of like we're going to not go all in on the player, what the Cardinals did, right? We're going to trade away our first-round quarterback. We're going to get Kyler. We're going to get his coach, and we're just going to go all in on this. Now, in the NFL,
kind of like the Sixers with that AI, maybe early 2000s.
You can pivot faster in the NFL than you can in the NBA. There's a reason that the players' unions and the leagues are two separate things, because what's best for the players isn't always what's best for the league, right? So when you always point this out, like when people say like the players have this right. Yeah, well, yes, this is I don't blame them for taking advantage of the situation at all. Or when I say taking advantage, it sounds like it's sinister. They're just doing what they can do. I'm not even sure I would do anything differently. Wait, I can be as richer than I ever imagined and play with who and where I want to play. I'd probably say yes. I would probably do the same stuff. I don't want to be in Houston. I don't like the coach. I don't like the owner, whatever. I want out. I might do the same thing, right? I'm not saying it's probably a pretty human thing to do, but that doesn't mean that it's good for your sport, and it's not. It is counter to what is best for the sport. It just is.
Yeah,
I don't know how they fix that.
They don't.
Like, I think it's a far bigger problem than players taking nights off. Like, that's a problem, but whatever. Baseball player, like, I might go to a Giants game and not see Barry Bonds. It happened to me as a kid a few times. Like, whatever. It sucks, but part of the deal. But
I think the snowball of the Avalanche is almost too far down the hill to really slow it down right now. And the money's so big and the players have so much power. I think the league's in a slippery slope right now. And listen, I'm one of the only guys I've ever seen on Twitter that is fucking critical of this commissioner. I mean, he's just I think the commissioner, one thing David Stern had, and the media used to hate him, he was a little dictatorish, and he would draw a line in the sand. And there were checks and balances in the league. And with Adam Silver, he gets fucking tossed around. He has no juice. And part of that might just be these owners have paid way more for teams. The league has just economically changed, and I think that's fair. But Adam Silver has no pull, and I mean zero pull when it comes to making hard changes, because he's kind of the player's friend. And I think until he takes the stance of I got to be on the owner side on this, or our league is the ratings are going to keep plummeting. The interest of like the majority of the teams just being really shitty is going to be a problem. That's the other thing. These teams are going to suck.
So many regular season games are irrelevant. There's just not. There's no urgency to the regular season.
I was watching Jacksonville Green Bay, the highlights of it on Red Zone or whatever, and it was tight, right? It was like a tie game going into the fourth quarter, and I'm like, the one thing the NFL has that just the NBA will not is even their shittiest of teams that are headed straight for Justin Fields, which in the NBA would have been equivalent like headed straight for Zion. Still trying their ass off, and it's still a very bettable game, and it was actually kind of a watchable game. The NBA just lacks that.
Yeah, I mean, they've got such a small inventory that it just...
But I think 20, 30 years ago, before the money got out of control, there was still in the NBA people playing for positions, people playing for jobs, and I think now it's become a little bit of a scholarship league. James Harden deserves a scholarship, but even a lot of guys get these 4-year, $80 million deal, and a year in, you're like, God, I wish I was paying that guy about $3 million.
Well, yeah. But again, I would say you can even live with all that if you found a way for guys to mostly be in the same spot year after year. Which
I just don't. I mean,
guy, genie back in the bottle.
I think it's just only getting crazier and crazier.
It is. And if Harden's on the Nets, I mean, I'll watch.
When I saw the James Harden, it's one thing to want to trade. It's another thing, like, I only want to play for the Nets. And then I'm like, isn't that where Kevin and Kyrie? Oh, yeah, that is where those guys. It's like, what the fuck?
I know.
That's one of the crazier headlines I've seen in recent memory. And again, I'm not shocked by much, but I kind of had to do, is this serious? I'm like, yeah, this is dead serious.